Hey there. In this reflection, we're going to talk about something pretty universal, right? That feeling you get when you just hit a wall. We're going to explore what those obstacles are really about and that resistance we all feel when our plans suddenly grind to a halt.
I mean, it's a simple truth, isn't it? The path forward is, well, it's almost never a straight line. You set a course, you've got a goal in mind, but life just has this way of throwing in twists, turns, and all kinds of unexpected roadblocks. Progress is rarely that simple journey from point A to point B.
So the ideas we're going to be exploring here are drawn from a really interesting document called Purposeful and Fulfilling Life. And it has some just really thoughtful observations about how we can navigate what stands in our way, those challenges that just seem to pop up on any path that's actually worth taking.
Okay, so let's start right at that first moment of contact, that initial friction. You know, when you're moving along just fine, and then, bam, something stands in your way. Now, this is where things get really interesting because it completely reframes the whole experience. The document suggests that hitting an obstacle isn't some sign that you're doing something wrong or that you're on the wrong path. No. In fact, it's often proof that you're actually aiming for something that matters. And what's our first instinct when that happens? For so many of us, it's just to push harder, right? We try to force a solution. But as the source material points out, that gut reaction, the one driven by all that pressure and urgency, usually just makes things worse. It kind of reinforces the barrier.
So, what happens when pushing doesn't work? Well, it brings up this really important question: why do we hesitate? So often, when progress gets interrupted, we just stop. A kind of paralysis can set in. And the source suggests it's because our judgment gets clouded by confusion, maybe some panic, just the sheer weight of it all.
And you know, that hesitation, that inaction, well, it has a real weight to it, a cost. The document actually calls this the cost of complacency. And yeah, it can be pretty heavy.
And what's crucial to understand here is that procrastination, this kind of delay, it doesn't usually come from just being idle or lazy. It's often born from just feeling completely overwhelmed. We see a problem, and it just looks so complex, our brain tells us this is too big, and we just stop.
So you've really got two paths here, right? On one side, there's timely action. Even if it's an imperfect step, just engaging with the problem starts to open up a pathway to a solution. But on the other side, prolonged avoidance. That's where a totally manageable issue can grow into something way, way harder to deal with.
Yeah, and this quote from the document really hits it home. Unaddressed problems do not resolve themselves through inaction. They compound. They don't just sit still. They grow. They compound.
Okay, so if brute force doesn't work and doing nothing just makes things worse, then what's left? Well, the document points to a different way forward. A more thoughtful approach it calls the calm assessment.
And the idea here is that clarity of thought. It can only really show up once all that noise from our raw emotions has been quieted down. The first step isn't tackling the problem, it's tackling the panic.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, first, you step back from the barrier. You deliberately quiet that sense of urgency and emotion. Then, you examine the whole thing with curiosity, not fear. And from there, you allow a solution to surface on its own.
And this is the hopeful part, really. It suggests that there is almost always a way forward, if we're willing to invest the time and energy into actually finding it. It's a path built on patience, not pressure. Which brings us to our final section, taking that deliberate path forward. What does it actually mean to act with the power of persistent effort?
Yeah, moving past this stuff isn't about one big, heroic push. It's about a few key things working together. We're talking about deliberate, focused action, not just being busy. It's about combining imagination with time, putting in persistent effort, and, this one's huge, being adaptable instead of sticking to a rigid plan.
And really, it all comes down to this. The choice is always there. We can either let circumstances just happen to us, or we can take focused, deliberate action to actually shape the outcome.
So, as we wrap up, just a quick reminder that all these reflections on navigating life's challenges, they're drawn from that document, Purposeful and Fulfilling Life. Think of them less as rules and more as, food for thought. And I want to leave you with one last powerful idea from the source. Personal responsibility for the direction of one's life is not a burden, but a source of genuine power. It's not supposed to be a heavy weight. It's the very thing that gives us strength.
So the question to leave with is, what path will you choose to shape?